Hi, this is Dr. Perry Carpenter. I'd like to thank you for taking the time to join me on this month's video. On this month's video, I want to talk to you about some very important topics related to you, related to your health, and related to your physical condition. And this video is being recorded in early 2016, not exactly in January, but early 2016. So it's probably not too late to revisit some of our New Year's resolutions about finally getting back into shape and getting into tip-top form just like we used to be. Just like we used to be. And I want to talk to you about some of the natural consequences that we're finding associated with the aging process. Changes that affect us all, but changes that don't have to necessarily be mandatory. I want to talk to you about some things that we can do to offset the natural consequences of aging and continue to enjoy health and full function all the way up into our 60s, 70s, 80s, and even beyond is what the research is talking about in its latest findings. So I want to talk to you about what we used to refer to as getting out of shape. And all of us are familiar with the phenomenon of getting out of shape. Now, when we think of getting out of shape, that's sort of a layman's term. What do we think about when we talk about he's out of shape or she's out of shape or I'm out of shape? What are we actually referring to? What are the physiologic changes that are taking place in the body that result in that conclusion when we look in the mirror and say to ourselves, I'm out of shape? What's actually going on? Well, it might be something that you've never really thought about before. But the research is showing that there's a lot of processes going on simultaneously to bring us to that end stage that we refer to in layman's term as being out of shape. And specifically, the research and the literature is now identifying a couple of these conditions and a couple of these phenomena that are taking place within the physical body. And the research is now defining this condition that we call being out of shape. The research is referring to this condition as sarcopenic obesity. Sarcopenic obesity. So let's define those scientific terms. Sarcopenic obesity refers to the simultaneous co-occurrence, meaning these are happening at the same time, of losing precious and vital muscle mass and muscle function. So that's the sarcopenic portion of sarcopenic obesity. Sarcopenia refers to the age-related loss of muscle mass and loss of muscle function. So you knew this to be true. You know that as we age, we lose vital muscle mass and we lose vital muscle function. And you can tell that by simply realizing that you're not as strong as you used to be, right? You're not as strong as you used to be. Why is that? Because with aging, we lose vital muscle mass, which is the quantity of the muscle of our body, and we also lose muscle function, which is the ability to produce strength, the ability to lift heavy objects, the ability to exert power. So we lose muscle mass and we lose muscle function as we age. That's sarcopenia. And then the obesity, we're all familiar with obesity. Obesity is the excess accumulation of adipose tissue, which is body fat. So with sarcopenic obesity, we see the simultaneous occurrence of two things, neither of which we want, neither of which have any beneficial effect on our well-being, our longevity, and our enjoyment of a full functional and active and healthy lifestyle. We have the simultaneous loss of vital muscle mass and function and the excess accumulation of junk, adipose, spare tissue, inner tissue that contributes nothing to our function and carries with it a variety of health risks. such as cardiovascular disease, such as risk for stroke, such as risk for the development of lifestyle diseases such as hypertension, such as diabetes, such as metabolic syndrome. So with sarcopenic obesity, we have the simultaneous occurrence of two deadly and devastating conditions, each of which singularly conspire to ruin our life, but when combined, contribute to unnecessary declines in function that, in my opinion, are simply unacceptable. Now, if you're the type of person who is comfortable with age-related declines and loss of function and diminution of activity, then this video probably will not be for you. But this video is for those people who are not okay, are not okay with accepting decrements and decline in function that happen all too quickly. So this video is for people who want to take a stand, who want to push back against the natural declines of aging, and who want to enjoy full healthy function throughout the lifespan. Okay? So with sarcopenic obesity, we have two things. We have loss of muscle mass and we have excess accumulation of body fat. What can we do? What can we do to combat these two phenomena? Well, the prescription for sarcopenic obesity differs where in the range of sarcopenic obesity you fall. And sarcopenic obesity falls along a range. Some people have way too much body fat, but because they're younger, they have some preservation of muscle function. So that type of person would require an approach more tailored toward attacking the body fat component of the sarcopenic obesity. Another person might have not a whole lot of excess adipose fat tissue on their body, but be extremely weak, whether it be from disease, from age, from disuse, from atrophy, what have you. And then that type of person would require an approach more structured or tailored toward the development of the muscle tissue of the body. So the exact prescription for sarcopenic obesity varies depending upon where in the spectrum of sarcopenia and where in the spectrum of obesity you fall, but we're all falling somewhere within there. And so I want to give you some generalized prescriptions and some generalized ideas as to how to use exercise to combat these two devastating conditions of sarcopenia and obesity. Okay, now a couple of facts, and I want you to do this yourself at home. Sarcopenia, loss of muscle function, can be measured. And a couple of the measures that we use have to do with grip strength testing. And I can do this for you in the office the next time you come because I have a grip strength testing apparatus. So grip strength testing is one measure for loss of muscle function. So we find that, and this is what the research is saying, men that have a grip strength of less than 32 kilograms is defined as loss of muscle function. For women, the grip strength threshold is less than 18 kilograms. So the next time you come in to see me, remind me and we will give you the grip strength test and find out what your grip strength is. Also, sarcopenia can be defined as a walking speed less than 1.8 to 2.2 miles per hour. 1.8 to 2.2 miles per hour. Average walking speed is approximately 2.5 to 3 miles per hour. But as our muscles weaken and lose function, this shows up in our walking speed. And so if you're unable to walk 317 yards in about 6 minutes, in exactly 6 minutes, that would be defined, you would be classified as having sarcopenia. Okay, so there's two measures. Grip strength less than 32 kilograms in men, 18 kilograms in women. and then walking speed less than 1.8 to 2.2 miles per hour. Now, obesity has several different measures as well, and you're probably familiar with the body mass index as one measure of obesity. Body mass index over 30 is classified as obesity, but because body mass index can be elevated in people who are not obese, for example, football players have a high body mass index, bodybuilders have a high body mass index, heavy muscular people have a high body mass index. So body mass index is not the best measure for obesity, it's simply one measure. But for our purposes, obesity can be defined as an excess waist circumference. Excess waist circumference. So in men, if your waist circumference is over 40 inches, that qualifies as obesity. So I want you to measure your own waistline. For women, waist measurement over 34 inches is classified as obesity. So 34 inches is not a lot. That's actually a small waistline for most people. But the threshold for women is quite tight at 34 inches. So men and women, I want you to measure your waistline at the narrowest spot between your bottom rib and your hip. Find the narrowest spot in that range, take a measurement, and if it's over 34 for women and over 40 for men, that's classified as obese and requires immediate attention. Okay? So there's a couple of different measures. I want you to check your walking speed, and I want you to check your waist circumference. When you come in the office, I will test your grip strength for you. And if you don't have access to some sort of way to measure 317 yards, you can simply walk on a treadmill at the gym or the health club and set it between 1.8 and 2.2. And if you're unable to keep up with that without suffering distress, that is one clinical measure of sarcopenia. Okay? Okay. So what to do? Well, these are some general recommendations. And for those of you that belong to a health club, this is going to be easy to implement. For those of you that do not belong to a health club, I recommend that you join a health club. They call them health clubs. And a health club is nothing more than $1 million physical therapy center. And it's a place where you can easily implement these recommendations. So with sarcopenic obesity, we're going to attack this condition with two prongs of a fork. We're going to employ resistance exercise training to stimulate and develop the muscle mass content of the body. And then we're going to use aerobic training for its fat burning and calorie burning properties. So we attack the obesity side with aerobic training. We attack the sarcopenia side with resistance training. So here's a couple of general guidelines that you can implement into your either existing exercise program or your new exercise program. Okay? So for resistance training, we want to use 3 to 6 sets of 6 to 12 repetitions for each exercise, 6 to 12 repetitions for each exercise, and each exercise would be repeated 3 to 6 times. Those are called sets. So 3 to 6 sets of 8 to 10 different exercises, each exercise performed between 6 and 12 repetitions. This is the exercise and repetition range that's known to stimulate muscle growth. Not all resistance exercise stimulates muscle growth. If you ask the bodybuilders, the guys with the largest muscles, the guys and gals with the large muscle masses, this is the prescription that they use. They use 8 to 10 exercises, 3 to 6 sets of 8 to 10 exercises with 6 to 12 repetitions for each exercise. That's the range of repetitions that produces growth in the muscles. We're going to use a load of weight that's somewhere between 65 and 85% of your 1 repetition maximum. Let me explain that. Your 1 repetition maximum is how much weight you can lift for 1 repetition only. You can only do it 1 time. In fact, it's so heavy you can't do it twice. So it's called a 1 repetition maximum. Well, in order to stimulate muscle growth, we have to use weights that's fairly near. In this case, we want to use 65 to 85% of our 1 repetition maximum. So for example, if your 1 repetition maximum in the bench press exercise is 100 pounds, you want to select about 65 to 85 pound barbell. You want to do that 65 to 85 pound barbell 6 to 12 times for 3 to 6 sets of the bench press exercise. This will stimulate your muscles involved with doing the bench press to increase in size. It's all about increasing the mass of muscle content of the body, because if you do nothing, if you don't have a plan to combat sarcopenia, you will naturally lose muscle every year. Some studies indicate that we lose as much as 1% of our muscle mass beginning at age 26. Now that 1% accelerates if you have an injury, if you have an illness, if you have a disease condition, if you have a period of inactivity. Almost anything that can come along can cause the rate of muscle mass to accelerate on you. So this is the way you combat it. Okay? You progress your resistance exercise program by adding sets first before you add weight. So you increase the volume before you increase intensity. So perhaps instead of doing 3 sets of the bench press, you would then go to 4 sets of the bench press. When you're able to perform 4 sets of the bench press and it becomes quite easy for 6 to 12 repetitions, then you would drop back to 3 sets but increase the weight, perhaps 5 pounds. So you increase the volume before you increase the intensity. After every resistance exercise session, make sure to get in 20 grams of high quality protein in the form of a couple of cups of chocolate milk or a protein shake after your workout, and this will help to stimulate new muscle protein synthesis and help you get the maximum benefit from your resistance exercise session. Okay? So for aerobic training to combat the obesity, we want to accumulate between 3.5 and 5 hours of aerobic endurance exercise on a weekly basis. So if there's 7 days in a week and we need to accumulate 3.5 to 5 hours of exercise, that tells us that we need to do 7 days a week. 3.5 hours is 210 minutes. 210 divided by 7 is a little bit less. Well, that's 30 minutes per day. 30 minutes per day, every day, or if you don't do it every day, make sure that you accumulate 3.5 to 5 hours through any combination of days. Now, the American College of Sports Medicine recommends that you preferably do your aerobic endurance training on at least 5 days per week. So it's better to have a small amount of aerobic exercise done frequently rather than have large amounts done infrequently. In other words, you wouldn't want to do just 3.5 hours of exercise one day and then for the next 6 days do no aerobic exercise. Better to do a little bit frequently versus a lot infrequently. Okay? That's according to the American College of Sports Medicine. Aerobic training does not have to be intense. A moderate intensity is sufficient to burn calories, and a moderate intensity appears to be equally beneficial in terms of burning fat as high intensity aerobic exercise. So you don't have to kill yourself. It's just important that you get out, that you do at least 30 minutes per session, and that you do it regularly. You don't have to kill yourself. You don't have to go for a world record. Moderate intensity is all we need. And that's actually good news, because moderate intensity is much safer and much lower risk in terms of suffering injury or overuse syndrome. So moderate intensity is sufficient. Now, it's important that if you do resistance training and endurance training on the same day, that you separate the resistance training session and the endurance training session by at least 4 hours, because some studies are showing now that the endurance training session causes the release of certain enzymes that interfere with the muscle growth process that we're seeking with our resistance training session. So make sure to have at least 4 hours in between an endurance training session and a resistance training session. And I tell this to the guys at the gym all the time. I'll see guys in the gym doing 30 to 45 minutes of cardio training, and then going from the cardio training into the weight room, and they wonder why they're not getting any changes, why they're not getting stronger with the weights, why they're not looking any better, why they're not getting any leaner. And it's because with the endurance training, there's some enzymes released that interfere and compete with the muscle growth and muscle building process. So those two sequences need to be separated by at least 4 hours. As far as aerobic training progressions, you want to progress no more than 10% per week. And that's 10%, we're talking about time progression. So if your first week you're able to do 2 hours, you're able to accumulate 2 hours, 120 minutes of endurance training. Remember, our goal is 3.5 to 5 hours. Let's say the first week you commence your program and you're able to accumulate 2 hours. Well, first of all, congratulations. That's a great accomplishment. And on your next week, you want to progress no more than 10%. So in other words, you wouldn't jump from 2 hours right up to 3.5 hours. That would be almost a 100, well, that would be about a 66% increase. We want to increase no more than 10%. So if you did 120 minutes the first week, a good goal for the next week would be 120 minutes plus 12 minutes, 132 minutes, and then 10%, 10%, 10% until you reach your goal of 3.5 to 5 hours per week. Okay? Now, the most important thing, is consistency. Consistency. Once you get started, you need to stay with it. It takes time. I just read some studies that talk about 90 days before you see your first visible outward sign on your body of any change happening from your efforts through exercise. 90 days. So you can look at yourself in 60 days and conclude that nothing's happening. This isn't working. I'm on the wrong program. I'm wasting my time. But you need to stay with it. Some studies suggest that our first outward sign, visible sign, okay? Now, inward signs, inward changes are happening, but they don't manifest externally for approximately 90 days. So you need to stay with it, stay with it, stay with it, and we're looking at a long-term commitment. And this is how we attack the dual and combined conditions of sarcopenia and obesity. You know, we're not going to end up in the promised land without putting out some effort. And it's true, those of you that have a garden at home, and this is just an analogy, you don't get beautiful roses and beautiful vegetables and beautiful fruits from your garden without planting those seeds and then tending those seeds. Well, on the other hand, weeds seem to come to the garden effortlessly. You don't have to plant weed seeds. Weeds come all on their own. If you do nothing in your garden, your garden will produce weeds. It's effortless. Well, the weeds of the body that come effortlessly if you do nothing, if you don't have a plan to combat the weeds of the body are sarcopenia, loss of muscle mass with aging, loss of muscle function with aging, and obesity, the excess accumulation of body fat. These are just the natural degenerative conditions of the body. But we don't have to accept these. We can fight against these, and we can succeed in retaining our muscle mass and in maintaining a sleek, slim figure and enjoying a healthy, active, and physically vibrant lifestyle throughout all of the decades. And it begins with this simple program. So I want to conclude by letting you know that I am a credentialed exercise professional. I have 2 credentials from the National Strength and Conditioning Association. These are very prestigious credentials. And if you have any questions or need any help with developing an exercise program, I'm more than happy to help you do that. So just let me know and I'll help you out. So I hope you've enjoyed today's video discussion. I'm bringing you topics on a monthly basis that I believe will have immediate impact for you and your family. So this is Dr. Perry Carpenter. I want to thank you for joining me on today's live video. I look forward to being with you on future videos as well. And for now, I'm wishing you best of health and success for you and your family in 2016.